Welcome to Journey of Enlightenment. I am your host, Dr. Roger Gopal. I've often been asked if I believe in luck or if I believe that everything in life is predestined. I think those are very good questions, very valid questions. But I will attempt to give another perspective on this aspect of luck. And it is based upon Roman philosopher Seneca, who defined luck as when preparation meets opportunity. In other words, according to Roman philosopher Seneca, he says that as we venture into life, which in itself is uncertain, it is our preparedness, our ability to prepare for what is next. In other words, we equip ourselves. We get ready for an anticipated event or task. That readiness combined with that anticipation is what brings about our so-called luck. And that is an interesting definition given, and it is a definition that is used by most businesses and most modern day philosophers, that we don't depend on something that is outside our control to attract events, to attract people, or to attract circumstances in our lives, but we operate with the responsibility of being prepared. So when those opportunities arise, we can make best use of it. So today's session, I am going to focus on being prepared. It is the key to unlocking the future. When we talk about preparedness, when we look at getting ready, the question is, what are we getting ready for? We are getting ready for an anticipated event. We are anticipating something in the future to happen. And in that state of anticipation, we are equipping ourselves in the present. So when that particular event presents itself, we are in a position to make the best use of it. Because that is life. When we look at Ramayana, we know the story where Sri Ram went into exile. And the story continued where his younger brother Bharat decided that he will go into the forest and he would look for his elder brother Sri Ram, and he would convince Sri Ram to return to Ayodhya and take his rightful place on the throne. There are many aspects to this particular interaction between Bharat and Sri Ram. We can look at it from the aspect of leadership in terms of Bharat's humility. We can look at it from the perspective of Bharat's courage to face Sri Ram, fully aware of what Bharat's own mother did. But we can also look at it in terms of the change that took place in Ayodhya and the preparedness to deal with that change, which is the perspective that we are going to take in our session today. What happened in Ayodhya? What was this change that now brought Bharat to the forest to meet Sri Ram? Many things have changed. One, King Dasrath had died, and it was an untimely death due to his grief over what took place with Sri Ram. The kingdom was now left without their king. In addition, the second change was that the rightful heir to the throne was no longer there but banished into the forest, sent into exile for 14 years. Therefore, the rightful heir to the throne was not in a position to rule the kingdom. The younger brother, who was not the heir to the throne, had to take up the mantle to rule Ayodhya when he himself was not prepared to do so. A mother, Kausil, had to endure the change of not having her son before her eyes, not having her son greet her each day, and knowing that while she lived in the palace, her son lived like a hermit in the forest. Also for Sri Ram, that change was also a significant change, because he then had to leave his palace life. He had to leave his duty as Prince Regent and now take up the duty of a hermit in the forest with his wife and his brother Lakshman. Immense change overtook the kingdom, the people, and the royalty of Ayodhya. Change is inevitable. We face it in all aspects of our life. But also we know that change is the one constant that exists. Everything will change. At the end of the year, it is customary for us to anticipate certain events, such as here in India, Diwali is the most celebrated event. Because we anticipate this change here, we are prepared. So homes are painted. People get food, special food and gifts for friends that they give on this particular night, on Diwali night. We also see it in Trinidad and Tobago, where we participate in the same customs of gift giving and decorating our homes. We paint our houses, and we do the same for Christmas. In the cold countries, even animals display that sense of readiness for an upcoming change, an anticipated event. If we look at the geese, the Canadian geese, we would see that they are ready to fly south before winter hits. Because when winter comes, food is less available. Even the animals know that luck, or so-called luck, is when preparation meets opportunity. Our readiness for an anticipated event. In so doing, as human beings, as intelligent creatures, we must be aware of what those changes are as best as we can. If we fail to embrace change, then we fail to prepare for the inevitable. I remember one person once said to me, "You cannot enjoy swimming with the ducks, but yet desire to fly like the eagle." If you want to fly like the eagle, then be willing to stop swimming like a duck. In other words, if we want to embrace an anticipated event, a change, a new future, then we need to stop doing what we are doing now in order to gain something more as the future unfolds. Life is not static. Life is not always predictable. Life is very dynamic, and the things around us will not always remain as we know. The past 2 years taught us a major lesson in change and in adjustment. As people, we know that life changes. When we look at our children, we give them milk as babies, not heavy food. But as time goes on, their eating habits change, their sleeping habits change, hopefully sooner rather than later. Their learning changes as well. even as we grow, our interest at age 10 is definitely not the same interest at age 20. At 10 years again, and our interest at age 30 is different from age 20. Hopefully, it should be. And as we add those years, life changes, and who we are as a person, as an individual, also change. However, many people reject or fearful of that change and unwilling to make that change in their lives for many reasons. But we know that if we don't, then we are ill prepared for what the future may bring. I remember my grandmother, who was very poor. We grew up in a very poor family, and she had very little. And one day, she wanted to give me a little money. And she went under her bed, took out an old milk can, opened it. It was quite rusty, by the way. Opened it with a rusty tin cover, not those plastic covers that we have now. And in it, she had some money folded. She took some money out and she gave it to me. And I remember asking her, "Grandma, is this where you save your money?" And she said, "Yes, because we never know who will get sick one day or what trouble we may have. So she always put aside this money for a rainy day." That is preparedness. That is readiness for an anticipated event. She was getting herself equipped in case something happened. And that is what it is about. It is a major lesson that I've learned because I've seen it in my own mother as well, who had that habit of saving, putting aside just in case something happened. This could be applied in every aspect of our lives, especially when we look at our domestic finances, or our health, or education for ourselves or our children. We need to be prepared. What is one of the reasons that we are not prepared? Well, let's first talk about what we are preparing for. We're preparing for change. There are two types of change. The first type of change, we will call it low-level impact. What kind of change is low-level impact? That is the kind of change that we face where whatever happens around us may affect us, but not heavily. Just a little. For instance, your favorite ice cream shop closed down. Hopefully you will not go into depression, despair, despondency, and panic. If you do, that's another problem that we will deal with another day. So that is a low impact change. A high impact change will actually happen when it's a life-changing event, such as a new job, migration, marriage, bringing children into this world. That type of high impact change could have severe effects on our lives or positive effects on our lives depending on the extent to which we are ready for that change. I know of a certain situation where a family needed to migrate for employment purposes. The wife was working, the husband was already employed, their two young children were in school in their country. And an opportunity came where that family had to move. This change meant that they were going into a new environment, a new culture, a new language. The children had to move into a new school system. The wife had to give up her current position and then find something else where they were going to live. How did the family deal with this? It was not an easy task, because not all change comes easily. The family sat down and they gathered as much information as they can about the impending change, such as what is the nature of the job that the husband will now need to undertake? Is he capable? Where are they going to live? What kind of community is it? How is he going to deal with his children's schooling? The husband and the wife got all the information regarding the schools, the system of education offered at the schools, and then they ready themselves to leave. In other words, in preparing for change, they gathered as much information as they can so that they know how to ready themselves and what to do in anticipation for this new circumstance. One of the sons asked the question to his father. He said, "Daddy, what if I go to this new school and everyone laughs at me because I speak differently?" That was a very valid question. He then asked, "What if I make no friends in this new school?" Another valid question. He then said, "What if the teachers don't understand me or I don't understand them?" Valid again. So we looked at two major types of change: high impact, low impact. But how we deal with that change is of utmost importance. We deal with that change in terms of identifying what is real and what is unreal. In other words, this change that we are about to face, is it based upon imaginations in my mind, or is it based upon some level of fact? In other words, if we look at fear, fear could be categorized in many different aspects, but I'll use just two tonight. So let us take a look at how we deal with this change. We'll need to look at our mental construct. The mind naturally gravitates towards comfort. The mind wants to be comforted. When we face change, we sometimes face fear. Why? Because change usually brings with it an unknown factor. Now that fear could be high-level fear or low-level fear, but there can exist a degree of fear. That fear, based upon this unknown factor, could be one, an irrational fear. What is an irrational fear? An irrational fear is the fear that comes from our own imaginations, an anticipation based upon something that is not necessarily realistic. So for the family who was going to this new country to live and to work, initially their fear would have been, what if we go across there and we have no friends, no one likes us, we don't fit into society? That fear, is it based upon truth? Is it based upon fact? Or is it just based upon an imagination? Secondly, that fear, controlled by an unrealistic and wild imagination, could cripple what our preparedness, our readiness is for this change. The second type of fear that we face is what we call a rational fear. A rational fear of change is a fear that is based upon the knowledge that there is an immediate and real threat. Based upon the rationality or irrationality of our fear, we then know how to prepare ourselves. And it is important to make this distinction. Just to recap, the irrational fear is based upon imagination. Imagination such as there's a ghost under my bed, or there's some spirit hiding in my closet. When I open that closet, it will jump out and get me. That would usually happen if you look at movies such as Exorcist or the Conjuring series. The rational type of fear is the fear that presents itself as an immediate threat to you. We prepare ourselves based upon this understanding of fear of change. So to sum up what we are doing today in the first part of our series in looking at change and dealing with change under the topic preparation, the key to unlocking the future, is understanding what is this change and why we sometimes resist change. We will continue our discussion in our next session on how to prepare ourselves to embrace change and ensure that it works for our benefit and those around. Thank you very much for joining me on this session of Journey of Enlightenment.